Okay, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Some of you've probably seen some of this training before. It might be refresher training, it might be new to some of you. I'm going to get into the one activity that's probably the most used, but most done wrong, is the open house. If the open house is done correctly and it's done consistently, it has been proven to be the most beneficial way to come in contact with an actual buyer or seller. What I really want to unpack today is how do we make open house turn into your cash machine. And when you start doing activities here and your real estate activities, I want you to consider this the open house. If you can consider the open house the side hustle of your real estate game. And the reason I'm going to sit there and say that because I want you to look at the open house as just one bucket of money that is on the side of all the other stuff that you can do in real estate, but it happens to be the bucket of money that would cost you the least amount of money to get a bona fide seller or buyer. And all things that you do for his activities, barring past clients, barring referrals from friends, probably doesn't cost you any money. But if you're looking at activities that could be done consistently and cost you the least amount of money to get a lead, the open house is one of those things. But you got to look at it differently. All right, the first thing we got to look at open houses differently. The one reason to hold an open house, and this is what I'm going to stress more than anything else, you hold an open house for one reason and one reason only, and it's to develop leads with people who want to buy and sell real estate. It's not for the purposes of trying to sell that house. I hate to say that. You might sell that house, but I'm not dreaming this up. 96% of people that walk into an open house, if you want to really do the math, 96% of people that doesn't have an agent, again, 96% of people that don't have an agent don't buy that house. Now, the key is if they don't have an agent. If a person has an agent and there's been some form of drip campaign that the agent has them on and tells them that, hey, you should be sending out open houses to your clients that you have a buyer rep agreement signed with. Hey, these are the open houses. All these houses fit your criteria. If you want to go look at them, go look at them. And you got a buyer rep agreement signed with this particular buyer. In that case, there's a possibility that buyer might buy that house. But that buyer probably won't buy that house with you if you're the open house host. We're talking about people that don't have an agent, open house, is less than 4% of those people actually buying that house. The idea behind this is I want people to understand you're trying to convert an attendee into an appointment, right? That's what you're trying to do. If you look at the open house that way, you're going to have a different approach about how you do the open house. When you take a listing and you're talking to a seller, it may appease the seller to have an open house. It may even sell that house, but it might not get you a buyer for that particular house. But the seller's seeing the activity, they're seeing the work, and they're seeing the people show up or not show up. There's where the sauce is for the seller to see that. All right, you're really doing certain things to appease the seller. I want you guys to look at this open house thing as how do I turn the attendees into appointments? Okay, that's what we're trying to do. I think you got to understand how to really put this in perspective about how you master this task of doing an open house. All right. It's just one of those things that if you've done it consistently, it will pan out for you. The first thing you got to do is really identify the area or where you're going to focus on. And that could be a couple different things. It could be in geographical farming. It could be in price point. You want to identify your ideal client that you're trying to attract to you. And look at the house that you're doing the open house on is your storefront, if you will. And does your storefront has everything to attract the open house? Does your storefront has everything to attract the actual buyer that you're looking for? Then you look at the open house that way. So it's really weird. If you look at it in El Paso, we tend to have a medium sales price right now, right about $265. I think Martez and I was talking yesterday. I think he put a house on the market the other day. I think it's in the same area. He has this house, if I'm correct, it's $240, and it was on the market for about 12 days, and he got a buyer. We're starting to see the the difference of a house above the 300,000 mark is starting to stay on the market a little bit more. New builds, okay? Because you can get a lot of different bells and whistles with the new builds at that 300,000. And then you go to this resale property, if you will, and you're not getting all those bells and whistles. You're probably not getting this closing costs as much. You're probably not getting warranties, all this other stuff. So we're really seeing this break in the resale property market right now. More properties in the resale market are selling about the median home price. And when you start to look at things, are you looking at things from a perspective of what's the turnover ratio with that particular area, right? That's always something that's really big. And when I'm looking at turnover ratio, you're looking at a certain amount of time, the last 6 months, the last 3 months, whatever case, but counting for some fee, what's been the turnover ratio, particularly in this area. If you start to do your geographical farming and you're picking an area that you're going to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to be able to get my ideal client, but you want to study that area in the sense of like, how many rooftops is in this particular area, right? How many rooftops in this particular area? Let's just say there's 200 rooftops and you're doing your geographical farming. You look at in the last 6 months of the 200 properties that have been sold, of the houses there, they've had 20 houses sold. That would be a 10% turnover ratio. Ideally, be in the areas, if you're going to really do this and really study this, you want to be in an area, ideally, there's a 10% turnover ratio or more. The reason being is because it increases your odds of getting a bona fide seller or buyer. Now, if I take a same area that's got the same amount of rooftops, of 200 rooftops, just play with me for a second, and there's only been 2 houses sold in the last 6 months, would I want to do an open house in that area or in the area that has the 10% turnover ratio? You see what I'm saying? You want to be in a place where the turnover ratio is a little bit higher, preferably more than 10%, ideally, if you start to really break this down. And then in the area itself, the next thing you probably want to really identify and see if there's any dominant agent or dominant listing agent in one area. Right now in El Paso, I don't believe we have one dominant listing agent in one particular area. Now, this is barring new construction. We're talking about resales. Is there a dominant listing agent in one particular area? Probably not. You go out to areas like Phoenix and some of those other areas where you have a dominant listing agent for one area and they dominate that area. They've dominated that spot. That'd be different. We don't have that here in El Paso. You have agents that do business all over El Paso, west, east, northeast, Socorro, everywhere, because it's small enough to do that, right? We're a big city, but we're not that big where you have a dominant listing agent. There's a lot of opportunity here, a lot of opportunity for you to grow. You could become a dominant listing agent in that particular area. You just have to go after it. So keep that in mind. I feel like these 3 things, when you're looking at how to master this whole skill, I think it's really important to identify these 3 things first. Right? And it makes a difference. Next thing I think you should look at is how do you go about picking the right property for the open house? If you think about it, most of these folks for new construction, they're spending hundreds and thousands of dollars to market to get people to the area. Would you agree? Look at Campo del Sol. Look at all these other areas spending thousands of dollars to market to buyers. Some areas even have commercials on TV. These builders are paying big money to get people out there. So what I'm trying to get you guys to see is when you start to choose the right property, I want you to start looking at new construction and seeing what advertising they're doing. And can you piggyback off that advertising? Especially in Northeast El Paso right now with Campo del Sol, there's signs all over the place. Uniquely here in El Paso, for some odd reason, we have the agents that got all these signs and billboards in certain areas. I think you should piggyback off that, right? That's just something that you can piggyback off of, right? Areas with new development, areas with grocery stores, next to schools, all that stuff like that. That's all things that is advantageous for you to have an open house. So keep that in mind when you start picking the right property. I think you should take time to pick the right property in terms of what it offers. What amenities does that property actually offer? Think about what's hot right now. And if it has it, I would say, okay, if it's the right price point, has all the amenities, next to a grocery store, next to new construction, next to schools. It's a resale property at the right price point. It can be your right storefront for that time. So keep that in mind as well. Step 5, 3 or 4 days before the event, you do the whole door knocking and handing out neighborhood open house invite flyers. Ideally, you want to be about 100 properties prior to the event. This takes a little time. We're going to talk about this in a second, how much time it takes. But I'm going to ask you all, 100 doors. How long you think it would take to knock on 100 doors and pass out a flyer? Got less than an hour? About 2 hours. Just whatever you think, is up to you. Okay. Let's go with 2 hours. Now we're into, if we're selecting the property and we're adding in the 2 hours for knocking on doors, we might be 3 hours into this project. Is that fair to say? And I don't think it's going to take an hour to pick a property, but if it took you an hour, let's say 3 hours, because I'm going to calculate the time, maybe 3 hours. Let's keep on going. I've seen several different people do several different things and have some success with the whole door knocking thing. Most people, like she was just saying, won't be at home. All right. So the people that's not at home, you're probably sliding up on their door or maybe putting it in garage door crevice. Make sure they're able to see it. Don't put it someplace where they won't see it. We've done some beta testing with this, myself and Martez in the past. We have found out if you use yellow paper, it tends to be read more because it looks like UPS mailer. Martez has an example of a couple of them that he's done, and we found out they are read more and you get a little bit more drawback or callbacks off the yellow paper versus any old white paper or some other color, right? So use yellow paper, like actually go get some yellow paper, print your flyer out in yellow, and be basic. Just have the event details on there. Hey, the open house started this time, the price, maybe the address, your information, some basic information. It doesn't have to be really fancy. We have seen there is more callbacks on yellow paper, something to think about. Next, let's go into the whole door knocking script. There's tons of scripts out there. I'm just going to throw a couple. I'm going to throw a couple on the chat so you can have, but we'll talk about this one right here. Hey, your name from the team. Just wanted to let you know about the open house event going over at 123 Smith Street. It's from Sunday 1 to 4. Hand them the flyer. It's for the Smiths. We're trying to find a good neighbor for them. Want to invite you out. We might have some refreshments. If you're not going to have refreshments, it's okay. Just trying to invite people out to the open house event. Do you know anybody that might want to move in this area? Just out of curiosity. When do you think you might be ready to move? Doesn't hurt you. I know that sounds weird, but it doesn't hurt you. You have nothing to lose, right? You'd be surprised what people probably tell you. How long have you lived here? Where did you move from? What brought you to this area? If you were to move again, where do you think you might go next? Just some general conversation with them to try and see where you're going. You never know. You might get the person that's probably going to tell you, yeah, we're thinking about moving. Or we've been seeing houses for sale here. We've been wondering about how much our house is worth. Okay? If you don't ask these questions, you'll never know. Just a generalization of how you could do this on a door knocking script. Somebody said they knocked on 25 doors. You said you had a total of 3 conversations and potentially 1 person turned into a lead. Those numbers, that was Carla. Carla told me about it last week. And she just followed the instructions in the David Knox training, very similar to this, right? She ended up getting a lead off of 25 doors she knocked on. So let's just say you knocked on 100 doors. That's pretty cool to have 4 leads before you even have the open house. If you get into this and you do it, right, you could have leads that turn into appointments prior to the open house happening. So even if you didn't have anybody walk in that open house, would her open house still achieve the goal of the open house? It would, okay? It's about the activity prior to the event. This is how you do that. Any questions or comments about that? Anybody has more experience with that they've experienced some things with the door knocking thing out there in virtual land or here, that they've had some results? Just keep going to the next door. There's tons of doors. The problem is not finding doors. Just go to the next one. Totally fine. But if you have the numbers out there, you say, hey, I'm going to knock on 100 doors prior to this event, it'll work out. You have some great conversations, right? You can change this however you want, but you can see where the script is going with this, right? You're trying to sit there and say, okay, hey, look, have you ever thought about moving? And if so, where are you going? And maybe this might turn into an actual event that you sit there and say, okay, look, maybe we should get together. Maybe we should have a conversation. Maybe we should do an evaluation of your home. Maybe we tell you how much your home is worth. Okay. Everybody with me? Okay. So we're into this about 3 hours now. So if they tell you something like, hey, we're thinking about moving in the next 2 months or less, that's a whole different conversation. I think get excited, right? Hopefully, if you're knocking on the door, there's no sign outside and thinking about moving the next 2 months. The likelihood of them having an agent at that time could be pretty high. They don't have an agent, could be pretty high. That's another thing about door knocking. A lot of people also say that you don't have much competition. You're getting your foot in the door, right, before they start looking at agents, and you're already there. Guess what else they're thinking? If you're knocking on doors for that house, what do you think they think you're going to do for their house if you sold their house? They're seeing a hardworking listing agent out there knocking on doors, and the first thing you can tell them, hey, this is what I do. This is how I work. I work hard for my sellers, and this is what I do, right? I could be doing this for you. That's what you're trying to set up, right? If they're less than 2 months, you're trying to go for the appointment. Hey, it looks like the next step here, we probably need to set some time aside and go over your house and some of the evaluations with your house and tell you how much the house is worth. What time works best for you to get together? Got Monday at 4:15, I can come back, or Tuesday at 4:15. What works best for you? If someone's talking about 2 or 3 months, they're thinking about moving, there's a signal in your head that should go off, say, hey, look, we could probably get together and give you another opinion. If they told you, hey, we got a relative that's an agent or something like that, it's not really sure that they do have an agent. You can always go with, hey, look, it's good to have some different opinions or different options about how much your house is worth. All right. Would it hurt you to get another opinion about how much your house is worth? You can take this however you want. If they don't have an agent, you probably should go a little bit deeper. Okay. All right. If we are in a hot market, everything turns in real estate. Right now, things are starting to heat up a little bit, right? When it was COVID time, things was just flying off the market, right? If we ever get back into a hot market, you might want to get some analytics about what's going on in their area, right? It would look something like this: dropping by or giving a quick glance at the real estate market. X amount of homes have sold in the last blank days in your neighborhood. Did you know that? And if you do have this actual data, and you can sit there and say 5 homes are sold in the last 30 days in your neighborhood, would you like to know how much your house is worth? Same questions. If you have some data like that, you see a little micro market of a little bubble of something happening, it's a hot market, maybe use that as some ammunition, if you will, to have the appointment. Maybe they don't know that 5 homes sold in the last 30 days or something like that. Okay, step 6, about 3 to 4 days, run an event on Facebook or open house ad. You run that ad. You can take the ads and start dropping them to the free buy and sell groups in Facebook. There's tons of free buy and sell groups, garage sale homes and sales, things like that. You want to join all the free buy and sell groups that you can in Facebook. Maybe also run an ad for 15 to 20 bucks. If you look at step 6, along with the previous steps, this may take you maybe how long it takes to build an ad in Facebook? How many hours you think? What you think, Kelly? Okay, up to 5 hours. Okay, 5 hours for this one event, right? There's tons of examples out here that we have for Facebook ads. Some do amazing ads, way better than I could ever think about. Kelly does things with videos and all this other stuff. So you probably already know how to do that. If you don't have a business Facebook page, I'll suggest you create one and start running ads from there, because you're going to need to have the business Facebook page in order to run paid ads, right? So I think you should do a combination of free share and free buy and sell groups, and maybe spending $15 or $20 on an ad per open house. Questions about that one? Pretty simple, right? Next, this thing is about how many signs you're probably going to need for the open house, right? Now, if there's costs associated with the open house, it's probably the initial cost of buying signs. In the event you don't buy your signs, we do have some here. I just ask that you give them back so other people can use them. But I'll tell you, buying your own signs with your own information, with your own phone number in there and stuff like that will be an investment that you need to make, especially if you look at this from the totality of when we get done, of how much money this can make you. You would want to have your information on your signs to do this effectively. Signs work. When you're looking at signs, I think it's important to map out your signs a couple of days in advance. Like, where do you think the major intersections that you need to have? We have this thing called Google Maps, all right? Look at Google Maps, see what the main intersections are, count out your signs. This is give you an example. You don't have to be this detailed or not, but it does give you an idea of, okay, hey, look, I need 7 signs for this one, right? Probably need 7 signs. I'm going to need some balloons, maybe. I would tell you, if you don't have balloons, you can recycle little flags. I think that's better than the balloons, because the balloons fly away. You can put the little flags with the sticks inside the open house sign, and you don't have to worry about buying them all the time. You can reuse those all the time. I just think you should get the flags, the orange flags and yellow flags. You guys seen those little flags like this big? Little construction flags. I think those are the best thing you can get right now, and you can reuse them. So yeah, there's some investment to be made there, but you can reuse them over time. Yes, ma'am.
So what we use, and it helps a lot, we buy those actual open house signs, cheap ones. How much they look like, $3?
Yeah, a little black and white.
Black and white, and then on the arrow where you're supposed to write down, like put tape and masking tape, so that way you can rewrite every single time. So
Great.
that way it's pretty much, we use the big one, the big open house sign, and then we continue following the trail, the arrows pointing to the direction. And that helps, and it's not as costly as the other ones.
Yep, totally great. Several different ways to do this. I think it makes a difference if you have those flags or balloons on those signs. It makes a huge difference, right? Let's keep on going. Sign setup. What I have found, I think it's best to put your signs out about 6 to 7 a.m. It allows the sign to be seen more. There's more chances that eyeballs are going to be seen on that sign. You go out about 6 a.m., maybe some shorts, t-shirt, whatever the case would be, sweats in the wintertime, set your signs out, put everything up, right? And then you leave a sign on the door of the house. Open house event starts at 1 p.m. If people do see the signs in the morning and they follow the signs to the event, at least there's some form of notification saying, hey, the event's going to start at 1 p.m. You'd be surprised. Guess what happens at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 in the morning? Guess who's out? You got the joggers out, right? You got the people that's doing garage sales, busy people. Sometimes they get up early. They may drive past that, and the next day they may be at your open house later on. It just gives you the ability to have more eyeballs on your signs, all right? Now, here's the thing, what happens when people, I just think it's counterproductive. You're gonna get to the office an hour prior to the open house. This is what most agents do in the office on a Saturday, and their open house is starting at 1 o'clock. They're coming in the office at 12. They're rushing to get over to the open house, put signs out, and have everything ready by 1 p.m. It's almost insane to do that. I see it all the time, and I'm like, why are you waiting till an hour prior to come pick up some signs? Just don't make no sense to me, right? I think you should get your signs ready the day before, be out there 6 a.m., right? Get your little sign to put on the door, say, hey, the event's gonna start at 1 p.m. And then you go back, you chill a little bit, get some coffee, get your mind right, and get dressed for the job interview that you're gonna have at 1 p.m. that day, right? Then you show up about 45 minutes to an hour earlier, make sure the house looks good. You should have your little open house box kit, right? Where you got the little brooms, you got the air fresheners, you got all this other stuff in your little kit, right? Turn on all the lights. Do not park your car in the driveway. Park your car away from the house. One of the biggest things that people do, and it just looks totally tacky to me and unprofessional, park your car in the driveway. Open up all the blinds. I think you should set your table up with a tablecloth. Make sure it looks professional. And then put all your material that you're going to be using for that open house, if you're going to use anything, put it on that table. Make sure it's close to the front door, so when people walk in, they see it, right? Some type of guest registry set out, maybe your pre-listing package, right? Because the probability of you getting a seller walking into the open house is about a 40% chance that you're going to have a seller walk into an open house, especially if you do all this stuff, maybe some stuff about mortgage rates and things of that nature. Get your table set up the way you need. Once you get that set up, your storefront's ready to go. You're ready to open up your storefront. Maybe your table looks something like this. This is what we have in the past. There's one thing I don't think that people are really doing that I haven't really talked about lately. I usually have a sign that says, hey, if this house is not for you, here's a list of homes in the area. This is going to be your switch properties. The most important thing on that table is switch properties on your, all right? Now that sheet of paper says that if this house is not for you, no one gets that sheet, all right? You only have one sheet and no one takes that. If you get to that point, you're gonna have the ability to say, hey, look, we have several properties in this area that I can take you to. We're gonna get to that in a second. Maybe your table looks a little bit like this. Your business cards. Some people say they don't like flyers. Some people say they do like flyers. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's how you want to do it. This is just a table that I used to have. Step 10, dress professionally. You're representing your business that day. However you want to represent your business, that's how you want to do it. You're doing a job interview for anybody that walks in there. So think of that before you get dressed that day. I think you should be very intentional in greeting everyone with energy and a great smile. That's just part of the process. Example, hey, welcome. Hi, come on in. My name is Ben Williams. Welcome to 123 Smith Street. What's your name? Glad to meet you, Kelly and Carla. How did you discover the open house? It tells you if they live in the neighborhood, not live in the neighborhood, whatever case may be, right? The fact that you're here tells me that this might be the right area for you. Is that right? Now you're going to find out with my scripting in here, guess what I'm doing? Guess what I'm using? What acronym you think I'm using? LP Mama. All right. It's just LP Mama in person. All right. It's just LP Mama in person. Hey, looks like since you're here, this might be the right location. Is that right? Maybe it's not. Maybe they might tell you, hey, I live in the area. Maybe I'm looking. That's the first thing. We're doing location first, right? I'm one of those people that when I started this whole thing, I used to be like a guard dog. You couldn't come in the house unless you signed in. That's how I used to be. Over the years, I have changed. I'm totally opposite now. I want to just establish this location if they're looking for, right? I want to do a brief description of the house. Hey, the bathrooms are over here. The garage is out there. Out back, they has a pool. This and that. Please feel free to look around. Could you do me a favor before you leave? That's what I'm going to ask them. Can you do me a favor before you leave? They're going to say yes, most likely. Or they're going to look at you like, what do you want, right? Either way, what you're going to do, you're going to sit there and say, find me before you leave. I'd like to know what you think about the house. Is that okay? And let them go. Let them walk around. Let them do whatever they're going to do. Obviously, you want to plant a little bit close to the door so they can't leave without talking to you. But that's what you want to establish first. Okay. Now, once they come back, this is where your conversation is going to start. You can start off with either or. What did you think of the house? Is this what you're looking for? If they like the home, you need to ask them, would you want to purchase this house? It's the most critical question. And I see often that we don't do that. If they say yes, sometimes we don't even ask that question, right? Now, you're still going to proceed. If they want to purchase a home, that's going to be a different conversation. But if not, start talking about the price. Is this the price range you're looking for? Have you been approved for a mortgage? How soon do you want to be in your new house? We're establishing motivation, right? Do you have a buyer's agent representing you right now? Or are you still on your own? All right. I would love, based on their answer, that if they say, no, I don't have a buyer's agent and all this stuff, I would love to help you out. Do you have a list of open houses in the area right now today? All right. That's something they might want. They're out looking at open houses. Do they know where all the open houses are? You can start adding value to their process right then and there. I can email you all the open houses today. If they're actively looking, I will be delighted to work with you and get you in your new home in the time that they say. All right, we want to be in a home in 2 or 3 months. I would love to get you in a home and see you in your home in the next 2 to 3 months. What would be the best time for us to get together and start helping you find that right home for you? Are weekends the best or weekdays? Let's get together, right? Now, we got to understand at this point in time, there's no requirement for us to have, if we're in our open house with our brokerage and everything like that, no reason for you to have a buyer rep agreement signed, right? We're still okay. Now, if we went to go out to another home that's not in our brokerage, that's when we would need to have the buyer rep agreement signed. Everybody understand that? But you're safe. Walking in an open house in our brokerage, you don't need to have a buyer rep agreement signed, right? At that point, maybe that's the time you say, hey, look, I need you to sign in, for the seller's knowledge or for safety reasons, or hey, my broker, or whatever reason you want to give, but I need you to sign into my registry right now and get your information. Okay. So that's how I do it. You need to let them be free a little bit, let them feel relaxed, and then build rapport with them at the very end. Okay. All right. The first question up there, I think, is a pivotal question. The very first one, do you own a home in the area? If they say yes, great. You're going to jump over to qualifying the sellers. If they say yes at that point in time, I'm going to jump down a couple of slides because you're going to move over to a different script. Do you need to sell this house in order to buy? Have you had a market analysis on your current property? What is the time frame for selling your home? Are there any improvements that you've done? Or do you think your house needs, rate your house on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being brand new, where would you rate your house? Hey, it's a 7. What would make it a 10? Now you're getting to that whole qualifying the sellers and trying to move into that direction for that appointment. I think that conversation changes if they tell you they do live in the area. You need to find out, do they want to sell it before they buy it? Or do they want to do, hey, I want to rent this one out? I'm going to jump back up to the other slide here. Now, I think this is a critical question. I think you should unpack this somehow, some way. Had this home met all your needs, would you have purchased it today? What does that question do? To me, when I ask that question, it tells me if they did see something that day, would they be ready to do something right now? I think that's a pivotal question. I think everybody should put that in the arsenal in an open house, because most times the house is not going to meet their needs. But let's figure out, had this house did meet their needs, would they have purchased it today?
think it also prompts a further conversation.
Which goes into the next process here. And if it didn't meet their needs, this is where you're going to bring out the switch properties. Everybody in the open house, if you don't have switch properties, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because think about it, 96% of all buyers walking into an open house without an agent is probably not going to buy that house. So you need to have switch properties to take them to. Ideally, you want to pick switch properties that are vacant. You want them vacant because you can say, hey, look, I get out of this open house at 4. I can meet you at this property at 5, right? Now you can start deepening that relationship right then and there on that same day. And the only thing you really have at that point in time with the open house is more properties, right? So what you want to do is, hey, I can get you inside these properties. Here's a couple of properties right now. Here's a couple of properties might meet your criteria. Hey, I get out of here at 4. I can meet you over here at 5. Would that work for you? Okay. And then, of course, you got to get the buyer rep agreement signed and things of that nature, right? You see where I'm going with that. So however you want to unpack that, I think that's really important to have properties that you feel confident about. Hey, look, I'm 100% confident I can find you what you're looking for. Here's the switch properties right here. You don't call them switch properties. You call them, hey, here's some more properties for you. Let's go take a look at them today. Would that work for you? Okay. They're already out looking at open houses. Remember, they're looking at open houses, right? Okay. So as soon as you complete the open house, you can do this at the beginning or at the end. This thank you video, right? I think you should be inside the kitchen. Get your camera on. Carla, I know you don't like doing video, but put your camera on, right? And do some form of video. Hey, thank you for coming out to 123 Smith Street. I really enjoyed you stopping by. Remember, if you wanted to do something on this property, you can contact me. And if this is not the right property for you, I can help you with any other property in town. Something of that magnitude that you have no name in there, that you make the video at the end or at the beginning of this whole thing, and every person that signed in without an agent, you send this video over to them at the end of your open house, a personalized video to their text message. The response will be overwhelming if you do that, okay? It's all moving towards taking this attendee into an appointment, all right? If you haven't been doing that, you should do that on every person that walks into your open house that doesn't have a buyer agent. You should send an actual video text to them, thanking them for coming to the open house and telling them how if they want to move forward with you, this is how they can do it, okay? We talked about that. Okay, last step here, break down the open house. Head back to the office or home, whatever. Go to some environment where you can put things in your Lofty database, set people up on a drip campaign, set people up on a search criteria similar to the open house that you were in, enter their information and send everybody a thank you email. If you're gonna measure the success of an open house, measure it by the number of leads and appointments that you get. That's how I would measure the success of an open house. Next day, make sure you do the follow-up, have some type of strategy for your protocols for following up, right? Now, we're probably preparing everything we're doing. An open house, if you do it right, it probably takes about 10 to 12 hours. Would y'all agree? Let's break this down. 52 weeks in a year. We just told you the medium sales price is 265,000. 265,000 times 3% is 7,950. Okay. Now, the 52 weeks a year, let's just say you did 48 open houses per year. You took 4 weeks off and you did 1 open house per week, 48 weeks. I'm going to add 2 hours there. 12 hours. It's a total of 576 hours. So imagine that you wanted your time to be $100 per hour. That means the GCI of 57,600 would be what you would get. Divide that by 7,950. It would take you 7 deals to make $100 an hour on the side hustle. Remember, this is the side hustle, to get 7 deals in 1 year out of 48 open houses. Do you believe that's doable? It's extremely doable. Now, if you look at your open houses and say, okay, hey, this is what I'm trying to do on my side hustle. Can I pull $57,000 on my side hustle? And I can commit to doing one open house per week, doing all the things we just talked about. I can get $57,000 in GCI. Okay? Just think about that. So just imagine you increase the price point from $265 to $365. Do the math, times 3%, that's $10,950. The same 48 open houses. Now that same 48 open houses with the same 7 deals closed, your time per hour is $133 per hour, and now you make $76,000. The reason I'm saying this is I want you to look at the right house, the right price point, and the right ideal client. It does matter. So if you're going to do an open house, make sure you choose the right storefront and make sure you're being consistent. If you're consistent at open houses, it can turn your open house into a cash machine. And even if no one came into your open house that day, would it be a waste if you did the open house this way? It's not, okay? It's just take consistency and just take you doing this and taking it to a level where you're trying to get leads before you even do the open house and convert those leads into appointments. And of course, the attendees that come in an open house, trying to convert those into appointments. Does that make sense? Questions about this? Comments? La La Land, you got questions? Comments? Virtual Land, La La Land. I call them La La Land. Those guys. Lazy Land, do you have any comments?
Ben, can you please share us the information where you buy your sign so that we can order ours?
Sure. It's the Art Center. Yeah. Now, I say this to say, I feel like you got to want to invest in your business. And so, and also one-time investment to do signs. I know they're expensive. They get stolen, right? I don't know how many signs I've had stolen. It happens all the time. But if you look at it from this perspective, you got to make sure you count all this in. Now, if you're just doing one open house and nothing works and you don't come back and do an open house and you bought all the signs, yeah, that hurt you, right? But if you're doing it like this and run it like a business, your side hustle is your business, it pans out. Get your own open house signs and do it the right way. I'll put information on the chat and also an email and text in terms of what this looks like. I hope this helps somebody today, or maybe this is a refresher for everybody today, okay? Short and sweet today, all right? Not much to it, but if it's done, it can be done at a high level, okay? That's all I got, folks. That's all I have today.